Thank you for joining us for today's Parent University. This session is on Know Your Rights, Steps to File a Grievance Report. This is a bilingual session, so we will have recordings in English and Spanish.
We're really excited for today's Parent University. The plan for today is to do introductions to the team. We have the care team here with us. We will talk about what to report, how to report, and then we'll have some time for some questions that come up usually about the process. So let me go to our guests for today. All right, Anitra, take it away.
Great. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to Parent U. It is my pleasure to share information with you about the Comprehensive, Alternative, Resolution, and Equity Team, affectionately known as the CARE team. CARE is housed in the DCPS Office of the Chief Operating Officer's Division of Compliance, alongside risk management, audit, and special education compliance. In accordance with DC municipal regulations, we receive and investigate claims of discrimination, sexual harassment, bullying, and unfair treatment between students. While CARE does accept allegations of discrimination and harassment by staff, we don't investigate those matters. The investigation of staff sits with our labor team. However, in all instances of harassment and discrimination, we work with our families and schools to determine if supportive measures are warranted, and if so, we put measures in place for students during the course of any investigation. In accordance with DC municipal regulations, CARE investigates claims of discrimination, sexual harassment, bullying, and unfair treatment between students. While CARE accepts allegations of discrimination and harassment by staff, we don't investigate these matters. In all instances of harassment and discrimination, we work with our families and schools to determine if supportive measures are warranted, and if so, we put measures in place for students during the course of the investigation. Before we discuss the reporting process, there are a few things that you should take into consideration. One, the best way to support your child if they've been subjected to unfair treatment is to prepare yourself for the conversation, to listen, be honest, and act. You can be reassured, and you can reassure your student that their concerns will be taken seriously by DCPS. There are 4 ways to file a grievance with the CARE team. First, you can report your concern directly to a school staff member. Each school also has a civil rights POC, and that information will be shared with you at a later date. You can also call the CARE hotline at 202-442-5405. Or you can email us directly in the written language of your choice to dcps.care@k12.dc.gov. And finally, you can complete the online referral form. So, you've just filed a grievance. After you file a grievance, you will receive written acknowledgement via email that contains a unique case number and the name of the person who will investigate your case. The investigation will commence after the acknowledgement is sent. During the course of the investigation, all involved parties will be interviewed, and relevant artifacts will be collected as evidence. At the end of the investigation, a letter of resolution will be issued that outlines the facts, findings, applicable policies and regulations, the outcome, and any corrective action when necessary. The letter of resolution is sent to both parties. When you report to CARE, it gives you a voice. When investigating and resolving a case, we don't simply look at issues through a single lens. Of course, we want to resolve the issue for the student at the heart of the case, but we also step back and look at the issue through a systems lens. We ask ourselves, is there a systems issue that needs to be addressed to prevent whatever has happened from happening to another student? If that answer is yes, then we identify corrective actions that address the root of the problem. We are uniquely positioned to recommend process and policy change or institute quality control reviews across the agency to make sure equity is top of mind. So when you use your voice to point out gaps, we give it power to change outcomes for all of our students. That is why your experience matters. This is an informational flyer reminding you of what we talked about today and can be found on our social media websites. Let's take some questions.
Thank you. One of the questions that we have is, if a family calls the hotline, will they be able to speak to someone in their preferred language?
Yes, we have access to the language access line that allows us to get an interpreter on the telephone so that we can have that conversation with someone who can translate the information that's being shared to the intake person.
Is that the same case if I want to write an email, but my preferred language is something other than English?
Yes, we have access to a translator who can translate emails into English so that we can respond, follow up, and then our response is translated back into the language that we received the grievance filing in.
Thank you. And I had a question about this process. So after a grievance is reported, how long does this process take? And like, what should I expect when it comes to how involved I will be as the person submitting the report?
Great question. Typically, we resolve cases in 30 days. So from the date of receipt, we have 30 calendar days to resolve the issue. Some of the things that you can expect along the way are definitely lots of questions about the allegations that we received. We also ask for different layers of information. Could be emails, videos, screenshots, depending on the nature of the allegation. We also ask for access to interview your student. That's really critical. And we allow parents or guardians or third parties to sit in interviews if they're uncomfortable with allowing the investigator to speak with the student alone. And like I said, at the end of the investigative process, all the parties involved receive a letter of resolution that outlines the findings of fact, the relevant policies, applicable laws, as well as the conclusion.
Thank you. As a parent, what happens if I report something and then there's a retribution against my student or me?
Okay, so retaliation is prohibited by DCPS, and that can be found in our policy. You will need to let us know if you feel like you've experienced some form of retaliation as a result of reporting, and then we will address that matter.
Okay. Another question that we have is mediation always necessary after a grievance is filed if the school has acknowledged that they do not have the learning resources a student requires as determined by their IEP?
Okay, so a couple of things. Mediation is a voluntary process. It's not mandatory, and we don't utilize it in all situations. For example, if we have someone who's been accused of sexual violence, we wouldn't have them participate with the person who was the subject of that violence. Special education does not rest with the care team. If you are seeking to file a complaint under IDEA or related to special education, you would go through the Office of the State Superintendent of Education. to file your complaint. There are two kind of wings at OSSI. You can file a state complaint or you can file a normal due process complaint. If you file a normal due process complaint, you would participate in a resolution session prior to a due process hearing taking place. If you file a state complaint, again, mediation is an offering that you can participate in, or you can seek not to participate in it. And then OSSI would complete their investigation and list whatever findings in a letter of decision.
Okay, thank you. I had another question about what I should report. So can you give me some examples of like what is most commonly seen in this, in some examples of what should be reported?
Sure. So there are instances where students feel like they've been subjected to some type of discriminatory treatment, whether or not it's being called an inappropriate name that's based on race. So that would fall under Title VI, discrimination based on race. Sexual misconduct is a little broad. That could be sexual harassment and/or sexual violence or dating violence. Bullying or safety, that's pretty self-explanatory, but bullying comes in different forms. Sometimes it's online bullying via social media, and sometimes it's direct bullying in the school setting. And then unfair treatment is actually super, super broad because it really encompasses any feeling where you believe you've been treated unfairly that does not have its own due process procedure associated with it. For instance, if you felt like your disciplinary infraction that was rendered under Chapter 25 was unfair, you would not file that grievance with the care team because discipline and behavior has its own due process procedure. But if you felt like your attendance issue wasn't being tracked properly, or you had absences that were not real absences and you wanted to challenge those absences, that type of case could be filed with the care team under the unfair treatment umbrella. So unfair treatment is the broadest of all the categories because it really encompasses anything that does not have its own unique due process procedure associated with it.
Okay. So how about in the instance of my child attends a school, but at home we prefer to speak, like I speak Spanish. I prefer to read everything that I sent from school in Spanish, but I keep receiving those like my student's report card and other documents in English. Would I file a grievance for that, or what process do I follow for that to make sure that I'm receiving my child's information in my preferred language?
Yes, thank you for that question. Yes, you certainly could file a grievance for that situation.
Okay, excellent. Those are like the main questions that that we have here. Is there anything else that we should know about reporting or filing a grievance?
The main thing is to just be very comprehensive with your submission. Definitely provide us all of the details. If you have dates, that's super helpful. If you have names of people, witnesses to whatever the allegation is, that's super helpful on the front end as we're digging around. Location, just very specific details are super helpful. Email traffic is always helpful, especially if you're talking about responsiveness or lack of responsiveness. It's easy to track that way. And just giving us time to investigate. I think sometimes we want to race to a conclusion, and in some cases it requires, as we uncover information, as we conduct interviews, we're uncovering new information. It kind of sends us down a new path, just giving us the time to come up with, to deliver a really comprehensive resolution. Like I said earlier, what's most important to us is not just resolving the issue for a single student, but definitely taking that step back to see whether or not there are systemic things that we could do or change to impact all of our kids. And that occasionally takes a little longer than I guess sometimes parents may want, but it delivers a better outcome for all of the kids involved.
I am grateful that Anitra was able to be here today and talk about Know Your Rights and how to file a grievance report. On the screen right now, we have our upcoming Parent University sessions for this spring. We look forward to seeing you at some of those. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out at parentu@k12.dc.gov and register on the link that is right on the screen. Thank you and have a great day.